Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Girl Scouts of the USA National President, Connie L. Lindsay.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our organization, I want to welcome our Girl Scouts partners, business and community leaders, our esteemed panelists, and our future leaders and the past and present Girl Scouts who are joining us this morning. We're excited that you're here today to not only celebrate Year of the Girl and 100 years of Girl Scouting, but to begin a dialogue around one of the most critical issues facing our society. To present the issue and to begin that dialogue, I'd like to introduce you to the woman who is going to lead the Girl Scouts into its next 100 years, Girl Scouts Chief Executive Officer, Ana Maria Chavez. Ana is a visionary, someone who sees possibilities where others see problems, someone who understood the world of politics and business, and who in a very short time has already begun to take the message of Girl Scouting to a wider audience than ever before. She has served presidents and cabinet secretaries and has served 2 governors. And now, I'm proud to say, she is serving Girl Scouts of the USA. Please join me in welcoming Girl Scouts of the USA Chief Executive Officer, Ana Maria Chavez.
Thank you. Thank you, Connie, for your warm, thank you for everybody here today. Thank you for those of you, the hundreds who are viewing us today across the web in this great country. I also want to shout out to my colleagues from the great Girl Scout councils across the country who have traveled far and near to be here personally today to support us in this message we're sharing today. This is a great moment for Girl Scouting. And for the girls, for all girls, as we prepare to officially launch the ToGetHerThere cause campaign. As Connie mentioned, we are here to celebrate Girl Scouts' 100th anniversary, to proclaim 2012 as the Year of the Girl, and to renew the promise that the Girl Scout movement has made to every girl now for a full century. To all the girls in the audience today, know that leadership is your birthright. We promise to help you discover opportunities to use your brilliance, your concern, your compassion to make yourself a powerful leader and our world a better place. And we promise to help you build a new world, one where the opportunities for leadership and the responsibilities of leadership are shared more fully between women and men. We are determined to bring this about because our nation must capitalize on all its talents, regardless of gender, if it is to prosper in the years ahead. We, the Girl Scout movement, will lead this effort to achieve balanced leadership in one generation across all sectors. Together, we can get her there. Thank you to our 100th anniversary Year of the Girl partners, Alcoa Foundation, AT&T, the Coca-Cola Company, Justine Magazine, and MetLife Foundation. The investments made by these inaugural partners will help us secure additional support for our cause, which will extend beyond our 100th anniversary. Our partners clearly understand that this country cannot afford to overlook and underutilize the creativity, innovation, and brain power possessed by girls and women. As the premier leadership organization for girls, we are powerfully positioned to speak with authority, to explain why our country needs balanced leadership, and then act and make sure that such leadership is a reality within one generation. Now, here's the proof. For a century, our mission has been to establish effective female leadership, and we've been quite successful so far. 80% of female business owners in this country are part of our Girl Scout alumni, along with 70% of all women in Congress and nearly every female astronaut. We begin this process with girls. That is our unique contribution. And we know that girls are capable of accomplishing great things, of changing the world, far earlier than most can imagine. Just this year alone, Girl Scouts did the following. They designed a robotic arm enabling a young girl without fingers on one hand to actually write her name for the very first time. They built a helipad to actually bring critical emergency health care to a rural community. And they fostered a wonderful partnership between the Girl Scouts from the Zuni Reservation in New Mexico with veterans of foreign wars. We encourage girls to engage with their communities. We launch them into the world as a powerful force for positive change. And they lead in their own varied ways. We know that Juliet Gordon-Low, our founder, would demand that we keep moving forward. She would say to us, today's work is tomorrow's history, and we must be its makers. Now, making history starts with asking ourselves these particular questions. First, after a century of developing exceptional girls and women leaders, why? Why is it that women run just 3% of Fortune 500 companies? Why is that? Why do they only account for only 16% of all board of directors? And why is a girl's desire to lead strongest when she's 8 years old, but declines markedly when she's 16? Why is that? And after a century of hard work, why is leadership not balanced now? Have we failed as a nation, our girls? Have we? We know that girls have the desire and ability to lead. We commissioned GFK Roper to do a national study of our girls and their attitudes toward leadership, which we are releasing today. And that study found the following. Yes, girls see a glass ceiling. 3 in 5 girls think that women can rise up in a company or organization. That's the good news. However, they believe that they will rarely get the opportunity to be promoted to the top position in a company and organization. They also have a firm perception of the barriers women face. More than 2/3 of them believe that family responsibilities weigh women down more than men as they move up to their careers. Not surprisingly, a vast majority of them, 81%, believe that the workplace could do a better job of meeting the needs of their female workers. We know, however, that girls want to lead. They tell us all the time. 92% of them say they would welcome the opportunity to work with successful women in their communities to make things happen for other people, to make the world a better place. And while more than 80% of girls say they are interested in having successful women speak to them in school about how they became successful, only 4 in 10 say they've actually had the opportunity to have those women come into their school this year alone. We can do better. Simply stated, girls want role models and mentors. Girls are calling us, they're calling you to help get them there to a world that expects women to lead and validates her values and her ability to do so. So the question is whether all of us together can get her there. So we're starting right here, right now. Our girls have led us here, just as they led Juliet, and we're taking up the gauntlet. As our girls are counting on us, our nation will depend on it. This is about American competitiveness. Girls want to lead, and they have a definition of leadership that is uniquely their own. Our research shows that girls are more likely to describe leadership as collaborative rather than authoritative. She's more likely to associate leadership with the mission of making the world a better place. Our girls have spoken, and we're listening. They want to be a new kind of leader, one who accomplishes something meaningful, who helps people, and improves our communities. They are saying, can you listen? They are saying, I can be a new kind of leader, one who's inspirational, one who will be a mentor to women and girls, a leader who will work with men, treat them fairly, because they know only by working together can we make this world where the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. So let's review. Collaborative leadership that's dedicated to making the world a better place. In 3 words, the Girl Scouts. That's us. Our organization can lead the fight for balanced leadership within 1 generation. But our success will depend upon convincing all of us to see girls who they truly are. They're powerful. They're courageous. They're the force for positive change, a force capable of transforming the landscape of this great nation. So yes, we have a bold and audacious goal. We claim it. Each of us has a stake in this campaign and a shared responsibility for its success. We won't achieve balanced leadership in 1 year. We know that. However, we can begin to change expectations and how our country must tap the talents of 50% of the population. We can enlist the help of our friends, families, colleagues to embark upon the sacred work of helping all girls achieve their leadership potential. The Girl Scouts of the USA, with our scale, our history, has the right to launch this movement. We are calling our cause To Get Her There. It is a cause that has as its goal to change the leadership landscape in this nation by breaking down the barriers that impede girls from reaching their full leadership potential. Girls and women are the most underutilized resource in the country, and we as a nation can no longer afford it. We will spare no opportunity to make people aware of our cause and have them join us in supporting and mentoring girls. In fact, we are launching a national media campaign in support of it, and you are the first to see one of those PSAs.
I'd like to drop out of high school and get a meaningless job that makes me feel bad about myself.
I'd like to fall victim to the old boys network.
I don't want anybody to notice me.
I just want to fly under the radar.
I want to splatter against the glass ceiling.
I don't have an opinion.
I want to be a straight C student.
I'm going to be a biomedical engineer. I want to succumb to peer pressure all of my life.
I'm going to be a best-selling author and win a National Book Award.
I'm going to be a marine biologist.
Wait, I take mine back. I'm going to be a biomedical engineer.
I think I'll be the president.
I'm going to be Secretary of State.
World-class chef, right here.
Race car driver.
Artist.
Paleontologist. Film director.
Surgeon. Teacher. Scientist.
Olympian.
I'm going to be the boss.
I'm going to change the world.
As you can see, girls can really describe the problem, but they are the solution. They're showing us the path. Let's follow them. We are committed to leading this cause until that joyous day when every girl, every woman can achieve every good thing her mind and heart can imagine. Now, first of all, let me say, this isn't about girls over boys or men over women. This is about the future of our nation. It's about all of us together. It's about curing diseases, launching industries, and creating jobs, raising healthy families, and solving social problems. It's, again, about America's future prosperity. So today, I ask all of you in this room and all of you watching today on your webcam or your TV to join us in our To Get Her There cause. It is a cause worthy of the fight. And it is a cause worthy of Girl Scouts and its proud legacy, and worthy of our nation and its ideals. To Get Her There is more than a tagline. It is a call to action. There is a young woman out there right now. She's listening. She's watching us. She's looking at the messages we're sending her. She has talent. She has passion. What are we saying to her? Are we encouraging her? I know that one day she will help find a cure to cancer. But only if we break down those barriers for her and all the other girls surrounding her, that we provide the kind of support she deserves. and that allows her to fulfill her full potential. Can we do that? Can we? Absolutely, we can do that. And the future is now. And I call on all of you, mothers, fathers, business owners, executives, teachers, our great faith leaders, to sign the ToGetHerThere pledge. Those of you here can leave those pledges as you leave these doors, and those of you watching today can go to ToGetHerThere.org. Sign that pledge. Take action. Take that first step, because we know that when a girl succeeds, so does society. We all win. Together, we can help our girls get there. So I thank each and every one of you, from those who've traveled long distances or come down the street. Thank you for showing up today. Because today, with your commitment, we can get her there. Thank you. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our fabulous moderator here today for our panel discussion with our luminaries, to really talk about the issues facing girls today. And our moderator is acclaimed television journalist Deborah Roberts. As an award-winning correspondent for ABC News Magazine 2020, Deborah has investigated a wide variety of subjects ranging from global maternal health to HIV/AIDS crisis in Africa, to the abuse within the Amish community. Deborah began her network career with NBC News, reporting from Saudi Arabia and Kuwait during the aftermath of the Persian Gulf War. Deborah is a proud mom of two, residing here in Manhattan, but she grew up in Georgia, where she was a Girl Scout. Please join me in welcoming Deborah Roberts.
Thank you, Anna Maria. I still remember the Girl Scout pledge, oh yes. And I fondly remember my little green cotton dress with my felt beanie and my knee-high socks. You Girl Scouts today, you missed a fashion statement. That was really cool. I'm sure some others of you remember. Remember those outfits. That was really fun, though, and I do really fondly recall my days back in Georgia as a Girl Scout. But, of course, as you heard Anna Maria say, life is so different for our girls today, which brings us to this important discussion. I have a 13-year-old newly minted teen, and I know that we are up against a lot of things going on in this world today. And I have a daughter who, probably like some girls some of you recognize in your own families, who's right now very confident, and she's a spitfire, has lots of opinions about her life and mine. But I know that through the research, things will begin to change eventually with her thought processes and her confidence. And that really concerns me, so I am urgently interested in what we have to talk about here today. And there's no group better prepared to help us understand what we're up against, what's happening, what's lacking, and what we can do about it, really, than this esteemed panel. So let's get right to it, and I will introduce to you, and you've already met the lady sitting next to me. We've got a Mount Rushmore of accomplished women here from industries. Yes, of course. We should have a Mount Rushmore of these women's faces, from industries as diverse as magazine publishing to finance, to talk about everything from all kinds of lessons that they've learned in their lives to their current positions, and also ways to paint the way to that brighter future. So without further ado, Connie Lindsay, you already met, Girl Scouts of the USA National President and Executive VP, Head of Corporate Social Responsibility at Northern Trust Chicago, in her beautiful bright red, Connie. Next to her, wearing the green Girl Scout color, Jean Chatzky, personal finance expert, author, and finance editor for NBC's Today Show, that other network. Next to Jean is Michelle Kwan, figure skating champion. We all know her, U.S. Public Diplomacy Envoy and member of the President's Council on Fitness, Sports, and Nutrition. She gets to hang out at the White House a little bit. Next to Michelle is Joanna Coles, editor-in-chief of Marie Claire magazine, who proves that brains can coexist with high fashion. Love those boots, Joanna. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. And next to Joanna is Linda Descano, president and CEO of Women in Company, a service of Citibank and newly elected board member of the National Scouts USA. And finally, Kristen Sanchez, Deputy Managing Partner, Markets and Offerings, and National Partner Sponsor Hispanic Latino Employee Network at Deloitte. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I hope we can just sort of relax. And we've got this talk show kind of thing going. I feel like I should roam around with my microphone, but I won't do that. But I hope we can just sort of have fun with this discussion as we sort of discover what you all sort of think about this dilemma that we're facing with our girls. There are lots of girls here in the audience, and I understand there are girls that are watching us on screens around the country. So girls, we're happy to have you here, and then we're going to turn to you and let you pose some questions a little later on if you'd like. So be thinking about what things you'd like to talk about if you don't hear it discussed here. But I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Connie, if we can, because I'm just so struck by this stat that more than half of girls really perceive that there's a glass ceiling. I'm shocked by that in some ways, even though we know that things are changing with our girls, probably not fast enough. I'm wondering, though, with the ToGetHerThere, how do you plan specifically to address the visions of girls and sort of their outlook on their lives, given these kinds of stats?
Thank you, Deborah. And part of the work around Girl Scouts, our transformation over the past 100 years, and looking at the issues that are important to girls, of course, it begins with solid research. And one of the things that I said to our board was, we've admired the problem long enough. And so we're going to stop admiring the problem and really talk about solutions. So what we're doing with ToGetHerThere is to really ensure that we have the voice of girls engaged in dialogue with us about what matters to them. That statistic is frightening in some ways because it has not changed dramatically since I was a little girl growing up and going through school and seeking other levels of success. What we're going to do are specific programs, ways that we want to engage our girls and our community, all of our volunteers, whether it's through our Journey series, and we're going to invest in this model. We're launching we have launched a $1 billion campaign with a B, so that we can ensure that we have the financial rigor, along with the intellectual rigor, with the data that supports why women need to lead and the positive impact it will have on our country. So we have the courage, confidence, and commitment to ensure that we get her there, but we need everyone here to help us do that.
Joanna, I'm wondering about the media's role. I mean, your job is to sort of look at what women are interested in and what concerns them and what problems plague us. What role, if any, does the media have in this? And also, what are you seeing in research at the magazine for young women and girls going forward?
Well, thank you, firstly, for mentioning my boots. I wasn't absolutely sure if these boots were appropriate for the Girl Scouts, so I tweeted about it, and Eric Damon, who is the stylist for Gossip Girl, which may or may not have role models for the Girl Guides or for the Girl Scouts, he tweeted back saying that these boots actually deserved a fashion merit badge, so I'll collect that on the way out. You raise a really good question, and I'm thinking of two things specifically. At Marie Claire last year, we launched, because it was a passion of mine, a supplement called Marie Claire at Work, which literally and solely focused on women at work. And we were absolutely blown away by the response. I mean, it was phenomenal, the response. We had readers calling, we had advertisers. People really wanted to engage. There was a huge piece in the New York Times business section about it. And when we actually began looking at what was out on the market, there was really nothing addressing specifically women at work. And so as a result, we're now doing 4 of these this year because there's such a pent-up demand. The other thing that struck me, actually, when I was sitting on Sunday night at home with my newly minted 13-year-old, and we were watching, I think the film is called Life as We Know It, with Josh Duhamel and Katherine Heigl. And Katherine Heigl plays a businesswoman, and of course she plays the businesswoman that all movies seem to do, which is that she's a baker. And I then sat there with my children trying to figure out any movie which had a responsible working woman in it. And the only one we could think of was The Iron Lady, which is the one about Margaret Thatcher. But even that is told through the perspective of an Alzheimer's lens. So for those of you who haven't seen the movie, yes, she's Prime Minister, but you remember it all in this very disjointed, sort of slightly unfollowable way. And what I think is distressing, and I never like to generalize about the media, because the media doesn't really work together. It's a group of companies who are there essentially to make a profit. But one of the things that I think is dispiriting is the lack of great role models on television in popular drama. So one thinks of fantastic show, Modern Family, couldn't like it more, except why is it called Modern Family? There are 2 women in it, neither of whom work. And then the gay couple, which I suppose represents the modern bit of family, one of them stays at home, and they're even more like Ozzie and Harriet than Ozzie and Harriet. So then you think of the Real Housewives series, which has been a phenomenal success, as we know, on cable television. And yet, who among us really wants those women to be role models for our children? So I think we have a lot of work to do in the media. I'm thrilled about Marie Claire at Work because it's really about showing very positive stories about female entrepreneurs. But I am concerned that there aren't more really positive role models. And we went back to Disclosure, where Demi Moore actually plays a very successful female executive, but then, of course, she sexually harasses Holly.
Right.
You know,
there's always some flaw there.
Right. I mean, I'd be very curious to get a response at the end for the Q&A session about movies you can think of where the woman isn't a baker. Anything Meryl Streep's been in, she's a baker. It's complicated. It's the cupcake business.
Jane, you had a point. You were nodding your head here.
Well, I started my career at Working Woman magazine, which doesn't exist anymore. And I always felt like the reason that it didn't exist was because we had all decided that the glass ceiling went away, which is why this statistic is so fascinating and why it's so encouraging that you're coming back and looking at this. I have a 14-year-old daughter whose favorite thing to do when she gets home from school is to turn on the latest episodes of The Real Housewives. It's
my 13-year-old daughter does that too, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's like, why are you watching this? And yes, we all watch because it's a little bit of a train wreck. But I agree with you. I'm sitting here trying to process in my head who are these women, and all I'm coming up with is Diane Keaton in Baby Boom. But of course, she made food.
And she has to leave the company.
Right. And even Bridesmaids, what does she do? She has a cupcake cafe and she can't even keep it going.
There's lots of work to be done.
There is.
Michelle, for so long, we have thought about sports empowering young women and sort of maybe creating a different kind of a view of themselves. To what extent do you think that does happen? And from your experience, is that something that maybe we should emphasize more? Or where are we in the sports world and where girls maybe derive some sense of direction from?
Well, when I travel as a public diplomacy envoy all over the world, and when I travel within the United States on the President's Council on Fitness, Sports, and Nutrition, I see a lot of young girls trying to find answers, whether it's body image issues, whether it's role models, whether it's a goal in their lives, like the glass ceiling. And I've got to admit, when I saw the video and I saw these girls having a dream, one said, I want to be an Olympian. And I have to say, when I was in school and nobody knew that I would skate afterwards, and I would say, what do you want to be? I said, an Olympic ice skater. And it was kind of a joke, you know, a lot of people laughed, but I took it seriously. But I think it's important that young girls find their voice, whether it's seeking for advice or suggestions, finding mentors, because mentors don't come to you. You really have to go to them. And it was there, I think in sports, it was provided because I had coaches, I had a great support group. But when I went to, when I finished school, undergrad, and then went to grad school, I realized that I have to find help because I no longer had a coach. I had an advisor, but I had professors that I need sort of that time where if I don't know the answers, seeking help is a good thing.
Well, Kristen, how do they find that voice? I mean, you're in the business world, and we heard those stats. 4 out of 10 girls, I think, don't see evidence of the women, the role models like you that they would like to see, and to maybe even give them the notion that they can actually achieve these things. How do they find that voice, and how do they find examples like you?
Once we get more women in leadership, I think it's going to really help. Since we have so few women in leadership, they're spread very thin, and I think all of us want to be a role model or a mentor or a sponsor to women, but we just need more of us. So I think as time passes, you know, as we mentioned, the generational gap between now and our next generation of leaders, I think we have a real opportunity to get the women into more leadership roles, and I think that from there, that they'll be able to mentor, and then we'll grow the population of women in leadership.
But is the number increasing, though?
Well,
Linda?
Well, I'd like to just take a slightly different point of view, because we're going back to, I think, a historical notion of leadership. Money equals power equals the CEO of a large company. Clearly, we should all aspire to that, but it also diminishes the important role that so many women play in shaping the future of the companies they work with. And when I heard that 80% of women business owners used to be Girl Scouts, I think we should celebrate that, because that means more women see themselves as CEO material, but they're just creating their own style of leadership and redefining what success means. And I think we need to uncover not only how we engage women in large companies, but how do we get all of these former Girl Scout entrepreneurs and tell their story and relate it to the hundreds and thousands and millions of girls out there. So we are reshaping the conversation and reconnecting girls in new and different ways. And why define it the way leadership has always been defined? We need to broaden it out.
What about these leadership programs, though? Because in a lot of these companies, they do exist, but it's sort of like the diversity programs. They exist and they make the companies feel good, but they don't really seem to be diversifying that much.
I think the key word is program. So by virtue of the fact that it's a program, it would begin and end, and it doesn't do anything to actually change the fabric or the DNA of these organizations. And power concedes nothing willingly. And so if we have the same types of people in power, we need to make sure that we as women are mentoring, but we're also sponsoring girls, that within organizations that we are ensuring that you'll hear people say, and I say it, that women oftentimes are promoted based on past performance and men on potential. So we need to ensure that we are developing and understanding the potential in a woman, that we're sponsoring them in those roles. We need those programs. I think they're interesting. But what's equally as important is to really make sure that we are challenging appropriately to say, these are the women that we're going to identify. And we start that in Girl Scouts, certainly, with what we're doing today, but that we're sponsoring those girls and we are present for them, and that we're really not just pushing the envelope, we're tearing the label off the envelope so that we make sure that we are engaged in that and being courageous about it.
Jane?
I think we need a new word for mentor, actually. I mean, mentoring is a huge commitment, and as a busy woman and as one of the few women in your organization, you may not feel like you have enough time to be a full-time mentor, but in fact, having a conversation with a girl or a woman that you're trying to bring along and saying, I'm here to answer your questions. I'm not here to have lunch with you 4 days a week, but if you need me, you can pick up the phone and we can go from there, I think is okay. We need to break it out of that mentorship box and say, let's do this in a different sort of a way.
I also think that there is, I think it's incredibly important that women who are at the top now talk about the reasons you want to get to the top. And here's the real reason: you have more control over your life. So if, as I think one of the issues which is incredibly important is, and certainly I came up against this when I was a little bit younger, if you want to have children and you want to have a really successful job, you are going to find it much easier, oddly and counterintuitively though this seems, if you are actually at the top of your company than if you're in the middle. You have more control, you have more money, and you have more support. And you are also more likely to get offered bigger jobs by other companies. And I feel like the thing I never understood before I became the editor-in-chief of Marie Claire was that actually my life would get easier. The hardest thing I found was to be in the middle or to be a number two, because you're constantly bouncing around someone else. And the thing that helps you is to have as much control over your own life. And those are the issues, I think, that actually don't get discussed. They don't get discussed really within companies, and women themselves don't discuss it. But it seems to me that if you want a balanced life and you want a reasonable, marriage, dare I say a happy marriage, which I think I have, you might have to check in with my husband on that, but actually the things that give you great quality of life. And if you want to have children, which I always knew I did, I didn't quite understand how much I would have to give up when I started working with 2 children. And for me, that meant I had to completely stop traveling, which sounds obvious, but I didn't realize it. It's hugely important to understand the higher up you go, the easier it is. And it's interesting to me, and I am thrilled to be in the Times Centre, which finally has its first editor-in-chief who's a woman. Yeah. I mean, it's thrilling. But I think, it's not a coincidence that her children are older and she's not rushing home to a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Right. Michelle?
This is a great conversation for me to really learn from mentors, because, I'm at an age, I'm 31, I'm considering, working full-time, and I'm not married, and I want to have kids. I want to have a really, really nice family where I raise the kids, but at the same time, I always wonder, it's a great example of having a successful marriage and having kids, and you can also be successful as a business person. And it's one of those questions that I struggle with all the time, is that how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you have $3 million? How do you have, and do what you do?
We're out of breath all the time. We're out of breath. We sometimes don't have matching shoes, but you know what? We somehow get it done. When we talk about power, and we know that sometimes power also is inextricably linked with money. And Jean, that's your area of expertise. How much emphasis should we be putting on our money for our young girls and how they handle money? And I'm embarrassed to admit that my 13-year-old and I probably haven't done a great job of establishing her with her own banking account and all that. How much should we be working on that?
A lot, and more than we are now, in part because earning money is what it takes to engender the sort of confidence that you can then go out and get a job and climb the ladder. It's all part of the same cycle, and the fact that we don't have financial literacy as part of the curriculum in our schools is a truly sore point with me, but I believe that it's not just our girls. I mean, it's our boys, it's our children, it's our young people and our adults who are lacking in this area of education. And it doesn't take that much to take a child and bring them along. But earning is at the center of this. Kids don't value money that they're given. They only value money that they earn.
Give us a couple of tips, if you would, maybe a couple of things that we should be doing that will make our girls in particular, but our children broadly, smarter when it comes to money.
So I don't believe that kids learn how to manage money until they have money to manage. And at that point, the most important thing for them to recognize is that money is a limited resource and they can't have everything. So they have to make choices, which is what we do every day. I think an allowance is a fabulous teaching tool. Although I have to say I was one of those moms who was guilty of not paying. So I would get 5 weeks down the road and my kids would say, and I would have to open up my wallet and give them a ton of cash, which I would later resent. But my kids, I solved the problem with a debit card. I opened student checking accounts at my bank. My kids get their allowance electronically. They can monitor their own accounts online. If they need money and they don't have the ability to get to the machine, they can come and they can watch me transfer the money back out of their account and into mine, at which point I'll be the ATM and I'll give them cash. But it's like a paycheck, and the allowance has to come with a list of things that you are no longer going to buy for your child. So, if you were previously the bank for the movie or the lunch that they wanted to go out for or the manicure that they wanted, you have to decide that you're not going to be those things anymore.
Oh, good. I'm being empowered right here.
We were talking about financial literacy. ToGetHerThere in Girl Scouts. Our Girl Scout cookie program in 2011 generated $760 million in revenue for our local councils. We have just instituted financial literacy badges for our girls. And so we see that at the forefront of how we empower girls to understand money, its power, and to management. And often I'll say to the girls that net worth is not the same as self-worth. So you can make a lot of money. It's equally as important that we have the financial stewardship and the kind of compassion and care to manage and influence with the wealth that we have.
And Deborah, if I can add one point, when we talk to moms today about how they are managing money so successfully, the one thing we heard is the influence their parents, and particularly their own mom, had on. So we have to walk the walk and talk the talk in how we handle our own money, because we're going to be the best example that we can set for our children.
In managing the money, Kristen, I want to come to you about this too. Math comes into play too. Remember the Barbie doll, Math is Hard? And they got rid of that very quickly. I don't know if any of you remember that, but there was a Barbie that was sold at one point. I don't know if this is what you wanted to talk about, but I would love for you to talk about also girls and sort of opting in for math and advanced courses and how we sort of encourage that.
Absolutely, and I'll start by saying I think parents are critical in the financial aspect. I mean, I can't bake worth a darn, and I can't cook. But my dad, from a very young age, I'm not exactly sure why, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but I was responsible for looking at the canceled checks when they came in the mail, when they used to come in the mail, and somehow matching them to the statements, and that was my job every year, in addition to his wine inventory. So
two good jobs.
I did two great jobs. So I did learn about managing money very early, and I can say I can do that much better now than I can cook. So as far as opting into math and science and engineering, I was really shocked by reading the statistics. And I did know, when I think back to high school, my calculus class was definitely half girls and half boys. But as I got older, you notice they become less girls and more boys. And I could never figure that out, just possibly because I'm more inclined in math. I mean, I could do math puzzles all day and not crossword puzzles. But I have to think back to college. My roommate, who's here, she majored in electrical engineering. She was one of 3 women in the program. And I had to think, it always baffled me because, first of all, I thought it was such a brave step because I think it's intimidating in that environment when it's not more balanced. But I couldn't understand why it was that way. And what I attributed it to was the lack of getting more people in there, which goes back to the leadership. I mean, the more people we can get into leadership and the faster we can get there, I think we can get more women to opt into things like math and science.
Joanna, what happened to Take Your Daughters to Work Day? And I remember years ago that was such a big deal, and we thought that was going to shatter the ceiling and give girls all these great dreams. And then there was a backlash because people thought, well, what about the boys? And so where do we stand with those kinds of things? And did they make an impact? I don't know, Joanna or Linda?
Linda, do you, I mean...
Well, we, at City, we still hold Take Your Children to Work Day every year.
So it's now Take Your Children, not Take Your Daughter.
Take Your Children, but it's a great opportunity because, yes, we want to change the world for girls, but we also want to reorient and re-educate boys so that they're raising daughters in the next generation who view balanced leadership as a priority and see women in very different ways. And it is an opportunity for us to take the children of our employees to expose them of what are different careers in banking. It is, yes, about the mathematics and the accounting and the tax and financial management side, but it's also a lot about technology and marketing. So all the different ways that you can have a career in financial services, and it's been a very powerful opportunity for us to engage our employees, but also expose their children to a whole host of different careers, things that are different than their parents did.
I'm fascinated, though, that it had to be sort of changed to Take Your Children to Work Day. And I'm wondering, Connie, then, in this society where we are so worried about equality that way, how can you then, with Girl Scouts and sort of with these young women, try to create a leadership program that is not diluted that way and worried about?
The key here is balanced leadership. It is not about eliminating boys, but it's understanding what the data and the research tells us, that girls and women are so far behind in terms of leadership. We want to bring them with us. We want to help them understand what happens to our country if girls and women aren't included, how it affects us, both in terms of productivity, our GDP, all those other things that matter to us. And so it is a delicate balance that one draws, because we're not against anyone or anything. We are for girls having their rightful place at the leadership table, and we're willing to answer those questions with the evidence of what I see here in the audience and what I get to see as I travel around the country is the power of girls in leadership positions.
Yeah, I think I've read that more girls than boys are graduating from college.
Absolutely.
These
That's
days.
right.
62% of college intake is now girls. But I think what's incredibly valuable about this conversation and listening to my fellow panelists, and in particular, I'd love to take Michelle on one side and just grill her about what on earth it must be like to train for the Olympics. But I think what's incredibly interesting and important and what's so valuable about what you're doing with the PSA and with the Girl Scouts in particular, but is this sense of we have to change the conversation about women in the workplace. It can't be this sense of, you know, oh my goodness, I'm going to have children, I'm looking for an off-ramp. Where's the off-ramp? Where's the on-ramp? This sense of panic that there is in America, in particular in America, I think, about somehow having a family and having a work and the two not being able to somehow tie together. And you see increasingly women opting not to have children, which may be a fantastic choice of their own. But if we really are seriously committed to having women in senior levels of management, we have to be able to accommodate people with families. And that's about having, to your point, more women in higher places, but it's also about women who are in the higher places being honest about the fact that actually it can be easier doing that.
And you've got a lot of nods going on right here. They're like, yes, I know, I like that. What about your own, Michelle, go ahead.
I was just wondering, is it an easy dialogue to have? Because if you acknowledge the fact that you're stressed out because you're driving your kids here and there, and then you go to the workplace and it appears you're disheveled, like you have lipstick somewhere that you shouldn't, or you have, you know, I don't know. I only see my sister coming into the rink where she's like, oh, like, and then she has like one sock on, one sock off, but is that an easy dialogue to have? The honesty, is that a dialogue that you could say, I have a question, can you pull aside, or is it like a...
Well, I know lots of mums who are members of the Thank God It's Monday Morning Club, which means we're back to work and the office is calm and there's, you know, yes, there's some laughs of recognition. I think that women have these conversations. It's difficult to have these conversations in public, which is why a forum like this is so valuable. And I mean, Deborah and I have a mutual friend who talk about this all the time. And we go back to there aren't that many images in the culture that reinforce this message to women that we can do this. And we may not all be perfect, because that's the other problem, that everybody's striving for perfection. But, you know, the reason you want to be financially literate is so you can be independent, so you're nobody's stooge. So if you're in a marriage and you want to leave it, you have the opportunity to do that. And essentially, you have more choices. I mean, what we want to do, I think, is to empower women to have choices over their lives, which could be that you do go and run your favorite cupcake bakery at the age of 45, if that's what you want to do. But the point of financial literacy, I think, is not to be able to buy stuff you want. It's to be independent and to have choices so that when you're pushed into situations you don't want to be, you can walk away, either personal or professional.
Michelle, there was a time where you wouldn't discuss your children at work if you were a woman, or you certainly didn't want to announce that you were pregnant until you really needed to say something. I think that has changed a bit. I talk about my kids some, but I pick and choose when I want to talk about my children. So it still is not quite as easy.
I have a friend, and then I'll be quiet because I don't want to
No,
over-dominate this conversation. But she worked at one place which was very male-dominated, and her children would always call her after school. And the minute they called her, you know, sod's law, the boss would come wandering along, doing his sort of pimp roll along the corridor, and she would hang up on her kids. Right. She couldn't even say, bye, darling, the boss is coming. She would just put the phone down. And they got used to, oh, mummy's been cut off, or mummy's put the phone down, which is an awful, awful thing for anybody to work.
And the other part of it is, I work for a firm that has an on-site daycare, and we have for 20 years.
Fantastic.
And so we encourage that, and it's a very conservative firm, but it's that kind of thing, Michelle. The other piece I would say is that we can have it all, but not at the same time.
I've heard that.
So it's how we leverage that. And even for those of us who might not have children, it's, for me, work-life integration. Because at some point our parents are older, so how do we have that work-life integration? But it is that conversation, and to be willing to have maybe a private conversation. Do you know of someone who can help with this situation? But we also have to put it out there. Why wouldn't more organizations consider on-site childcare?
I think that's the most important thing. We have to own what we want. We have to be willing to raise our hand with confidence and be clear about how we can add value with a flexible schedule that we need. And then we have to enlist others as our ally. All too often, we're not clear about what we really want, and we don't go tell anybody else. We keep it a secret. And that has to change, because that's the only way we will advance. And then that gives us an opportunity to pay it forward, to reach back and create opportunities for the emerging talent that's following us.
That's a very good point. Kristen?
And I want to stress that I couldn't emphasize more the aspect of public awareness. That PSA is a good example. Another good example is just having women role models that are in the media that you look up to. I mean, I could not get here fast enough because I love Jean Chasky. I'm going to single her out. I mean, the Today Show is, you know, my favorite when she's on. So when you have that in the media and you start to look at people like politicians like Hillary Clinton in the workplace and in government, then you start to really realize that this is an option for you.
And I'm sure you turned into Good Morning America after Jean.
I do. Yeah.
Okay,
just very fair.
Yes, just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, I do.
Any particular memories of anyone in your past? I often talk when I go out to speak to people, I talk about a 6th grade teacher I had, Mrs. Dorothy Hardy, who was really demanding and exact about, you know, poetry and different things we had to learn in her class. And she left such an impression on me and probably contributed to my desire to maybe want to work in the public or in journalism. Any particular mentors or just women who affected your lives that you recall, Linda?
Well, I have to say both my grandmothers, but particularly my maternal grandmother, who is 95 and still living. She grew up in an orphanage. She emigrated to the United States when she was in her teens, promptly entered into an arranged marriage, had 7 children. My grandfather passed away, and she had to raise them. And there was no government assistance, no insurance, so she went to work in a factory. And then she also sold cleaning products door to door. Wow. And she was just resilient. She never complained. She never said, why me? She just said, I am going to make my way, and I can do it. And she raised us with, you know, you can do anything. She always believed in, it didn't matter if you were a boy or a girl, her grandchildren, she wanted to have every opportunity. And she said she wanted to be the strong root for a very, you know, healthy tree. And she just gave us all of that support. And so you look at her, and I just knew I could do anything.
The original Iron Lady.
Absolutely.
I think of mentors and I think of my parents. I look at my mom.
Both parents, not just your mother.
Immigrating to the United States with no money in their pockets and giving their kids an opportunity to dream. It wasn't their dream to be an Olympic ice skater, but they made those sacrifices. So when people say you made sacrifices to be an ice skater, I'm like, no, it's my parents. I've had so many mentors. I mean, they don't have to be on the cover of a magazine. They could just be, you know, at school. It could be your parents. It could be an older sibling. It could be a babysitter. But I had a role model in skating, happened to be male, Brian Boitano, and it was him because because of him, I started to dream of being at the Olympics. But then as I transitioned out of figure skating, you know, I was appointed by Secretary Rice, and she made that transition from being a pianist to being a skater too. So we had that in common into foreign policy. And then also my boss currently, Secretary Clinton, and being a mom and being brilliant. It's just fascinating that you can have mentors everywhere. So I always encourage kids, I said, you've got to look around you.
Right. Well, that's key, isn't it? Because somebody was just saying it's so hard, Jean, you were saying it's so hard to just be a mentor for individual girls, but I think to encourage our girls to look for people whom they admire, and they don't have to be mentors that they actually know, but people that they look to and can see something in, and you just never know what that one thing is that just sets a fire burning, I think, in a young woman, a young girl.
And make that connection. I was thinking, too, I'm glad you brought up Brian, because I learned this lesson from a male boss who was starting up a new magazine, Smart Money Magazine, at the time, and said, I am going to be a fabulous place for working moms because they can come and go as they please as long as the work gets done. And it became a fabulous place for working parents, but it taught me the lesson that it really doesn't matter where you are as long as you're where you need to be at the opportune and important times. And if you can manage your own life, then you can have those choices that you were talking about to grow your career in a way that might not lead to being at the top of a Fortune 500 company, but being at the top of your own little fiefdom.
Which is so key. Kristen,
Yeah,
we're going to open it up for questions, so be thinking about what you want to ask because we'll come right to you in just a moment. Kristen?
I just want to stress that I personally view leadership as many different things, whether it's in the business world, whether it's in the community, whether it's parenting, anything, like you're saying, it's part of your own fiefdom that you create. And just as far as influences, I sort of look to my whole family. I've got 2 older brothers, and you better believe I was rifling through their report cards to see what kind of grades they had so I can exceed them.
Not competitive at all.
No, not at all. And they were so much older, they didn't even care. And also, one thing I really appreciated was my parents. My mother did work, but she was also a full-time mom as well. And I think it was so important to see my parents supportive of each other. My dad always encouraged my mom and vice versa. And so seeing that in an environment, I sort of had balanced leadership at home.
And the sisterhood, I think, is so important, too. I mean, supporting other women who work with you or alongside you in different companies. I think that is so important that women can count on other women. So often we're portrayed as, just at each other's throats.
Well, I just had a very interesting example of that. One of our senior editors was going off to have a baby, and she came in, to your point about being clear about what you want and asking, having the confidence to ask. And she's a very able, talented editor, but not one that I know incredibly well, because of the way the office is physically divided, she sits on the other side. But she came in and she said, I want to take 4.5 months maternity leave. And the company allows 3 months. And I was a little flawed because I depend on her quite a lot, and it's a bit of a drag for me. I have to bring someone else in, and so my heart sort of sank. But she's important, I want to keep her. And so I thought, well, what shall I do? I'll go and talk to her co-workers, see how they feel. And they all said, you absolutely have to let her take 4.5 months. She's a terrific worker. This will make her even more loyal, absolutely no question. We will cover whatever you need us to do. We will make sure that she comes back. And so my decision was made for me by the people that actually will take the brunt of some of her work. And it was one of those nice moments where I felt I could do the right thing. She'd asked. I wouldn't have thought of it had she not asked, because that's the other thing. Unless you ask, people aren't brain readers. They don't know what you're thinking.
Right.
When I was 23, I thought everybody was thinking about me all the time.
We are.
Turned out
we
they
weren't.
weren't.
Let's go to some questions. I think we have folks who have microphones around here, and if any of you would like to pose any questions to our panel, please feel free to. You can make your way. Where are the mics? On either side? There's somebody right here. From one of our young girls.
Hi, my name's Amma. I have a question. Have you guys in your workplace or school or in your life ever felt inferior? Or has anyone ever made you feel inferior about being a woman and being in a high position?
Have you ever felt inferior in our positions, or did you say in school or in the workplace?
In school, workplace, any point of your life?
I have. I do. When I was in college, I started studying English communications, and I took a geology class because I always liked science to fill an elective. But it woke up a passion in me for science that I was like, wow, I could explore for oil, I can do nature conservation, I could predict earthquakes, and decided I wanted to change my major. So I went to see the department head, and he took one look at my curves and my Italian surname, and he said, why would I ever let you join my department? Why would I waste any time on you? You're fat, and you're Italian. All you're going to do after college is get married, have babies, make meatballs, and get even fatter.
Oh, my God.
So wait, so he did.
Unbelievable.
That
guy is still alive today?
He is still alive.
Okay, circulate his address.
So I did it. I went and had a good cry, and then I thought, wait a minute. I have a 4.0 GPA. I wonder if he knows that. So I made another appointment, and I persisted until he let me join the department. Now, I could have easily let him put me in a box right then. That was the first time anyone sort of looked at my Italian heritage and my body type and said there was something I couldn't do. But that's when I realized either I had to define things for myself, and that was the last time I let someone put me in a box. I think that's an important lesson for all of us.
That's a great story.
But I will say, 5 years ago, I did see him at a reunion.
Oh.
And he walked right up to me and he said, without missing a beat, "I see you're still fat." And I said, "I see you haven't changed either." I may have added a few choice words, but for the men in the room, I don't know if their delicate ears can. But I had a big smile on my face this time when I walked away. And that was the first time after I walked away, everyone looked at me. And that was the first time I told this story publicly. And by sharing it with you, and I've shared it with so many, that's how you own it, and that's how you get past it, and you let others know it's just not acceptable.
Good for you. That's a great story. Wow. That's a great story. I think we have another question right over here. That side of the room is dominating. Come on, folks, come on.
Hi, my name's Jaleese. Actually, I feel like this is a great time to ask this question because something you said really is in line with this. But so a lot of you are talking about how important you feel it is to have support. So our girls should really have support from their families, from their communities. And I feel like we're really lucky because especially a lot of our students here from the Young Women's Leadership School, they're at a really critical point, and a lot of them, I hope, are feeling really empowered at the ages that they are. Some of them are a little bit younger than 13, some of them are 13, some of them are older, but we've got them, right? They feel really, really empowered. But some of them may be, and some of the other girls too, may be in a position where they don't really have as much support from their surrounding communities. Within their school communities, awesome, it's great, right? But maybe they're also in a position where in their home communities, they're trying to shift the tide, and that's really overwhelming for girls that age. So what advice would any of you give to girls who are in that position where they're feeling really empowered and we have them at a critical moment in their lives and they're trying to take some action in terms of changing the tide in their own communities or in their own homes?
I would say if they're not a Girl Scout, they should become one, because we have that model. But it is important, you're right, that when you are the singular voice or trying to be different in the community in which you live, that others may not be supportive of that idea. But that is an additional way that we have to look for adult women and others who support the values, because not all of us live in communities that may support the values that we espouse. So it's important, the work that you're doing, to continue to do that, to encourage other people to support you, because as much as we can, model that and encourage others to do it. The success is resident in the young people that we serve.
And I think, who was it, Oprah Winfrey, who said that you create your own family? So if you don't have that support there, it's very important that they learn that they can create their support system too, maybe amongst their friends, or maybe it's teachers or whomever, but they have to sort of maybe take that extra step to create their own source of support. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add anything to that.
I also think change takes a long time. So your support group might not be there right now, but just wait, 6 months, 1 year, be persistent. And I think persistency should be part of the 3 C's. I mean, you have character, courage, confidence, that we all just talked about. And it's something that we Get Her There campaign is brilliant, because you just have to be persistent and just keep on doing what you're doing.
I would also add to that, read books. People have forgotten the great art of reading. Everybody has access to a library. Go and read the 30 best books in America. They're all about outsiders triumphing.
Good idea. I think there's a question up here. Okay.
So you guys have talked a lot about just kind of actually being there. And you're there, you're confident, you're already in positions of power. But I don't know if you saw Sheryl Sandberg at Davos on Friday. She was talking about how oftentimes, the root of the problem is obviously with the girls. And I work at Fortune magazine with the most powerful women brand, so I actually talked to Connie about this a little bit earlier. And Sheryl said that, when a young girl is assertive, honest, says what she wants, she's seen as bossy, whereas in a boy, it's kind of redeeming qualities. So I'm very interested, when you guys were younger, and what advice you might have for young girls growing up. And I'm 22 and I'm starting out my career, and I'm still kind of struggling with that, where there's guys in the office who are a lot more aggressive than me, and that's not my personality. But how do you still get people's attention? How do you still navigate your way through the workforce? And what challenges have you faced with maybe being called bossy or, you know, the B word or things like that as you sort of navigated your way through your own careers?
Any bossy women on this panel?
I would say yes.
All right, Kristen.
I think I'm less bossy in my personal life. In fact, my cousin's here, and I call her my boss because she's always directing me. But at work, I've definitely been called the bossy boss. And it's a fine line, because for some reason, women, when they're bossy, they might be perceived like the B word, versus a male will be perceived very strong or assertive. And that has always bugged me. But I think one thing that's always critical is to have confidence in yourself, and that really demonstrates not necessarily aggression, but an empowerment as a woman to lead and to not be considered negatively perceived.
And I'd like to change the nomenclature. I always say a boss is a double SOB backwards, and I don't want to be one. So I refer to that as my leadership model. And I've learned the art of the well-placed question. So if I'm in a meeting, and all of us have probably been in those meetings where it's male-dominated, and I'm saying what is the obvious answer or the right position, but my male counterpart says the same thing, and the leader says, yes, absolutely, male person, that is what I thought. So mine is always, my question is there an echo in the room?
Oh.
A well-placed question. But you have to earn... With a sense of humor, too. Yeah, with a sense of humor. You earn the right to get there, but it does take time, and people supporting you and encouraging you to get that. I don't think any of us were, this assertive early on in our careers.
We didn't talk about salaries at all. We didn't get there. But the question brings up the ability that men have and young men have to ask, not demand, but ask for what they want. And women don't seem to, particularly when it comes to money. And when you don't ask for that first salary, every salary that follows keys off that first salary, and that's one of the big reasons that women end up so behind the curve 20 years down the road when it comes to earning power. And I think it's a matter of turning the phrase a little bit. It's not a matter of demanding what you want or what you need. It's a matter of asking for it in a firm but nice way. I was raised by a woman who gets everything that she wants, and nobody knows because she never asks for it. She just, she
communicates it somehow.
She definitely, she communicates it somehow, and she turns all the perspectives around so that they see it her way.
I think we have time for one more question, and I don't know who has the mic. Over here? Okay.
Hi, there actually is a book, Women Don't Ask, so great points that it brings up. But my question is, how do you change that conversation when it's other women that were raised in that male mentality? Like my grandmother, I had to do a lot of education at home with even my own family because they were like, no, the men get the best meat. Or, when you serve dinner, they get served first. I'm like, but I'm starving. They've been back in the day. So how do you change that? Because now I'm in engineering. I'm living that space where I have other women that are in higher positions, and they'll turn around and go to the male, oh, why don't you do that? That's a great opportunity for you to take over that
So how do we
role."
redirect women to actually think about women being first? That's a very good question, actually.
Well, it's even more complicated because women who've been there and who have paid their dues often have the feeling that other women need to pay theirs in the very, very same way. So it gets very complicated. I mean, I think when it comes to turning the conversation in your favor, it's all about the evidence. And it's all about this is what I've produced, this is what I will produce, this is what I can produce, and make it about the work, don't make it personal.
And just like you said, no, this is not going to work. Sounds like you've already got it going. Unfortunately, we've got to wrap up here. Connie, Jean, Michelle, Joanna, Linda, and Kristen, thank you all so very much for being here. This was so much fun. So much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aren't they wonderful? Great conversation. Well, I'm going to take their cue. They said make the ask, so I'm going to make the ask. can you help us? Will you help us get them there? Isn't this important? Isn't this a message we have to take out of it? Yes. So thank you again to Deborah and to the panelists. Thank you for those of you who are here sharing your passion and commitment to this great cause. It starts today. We go to D.C. tomorrow to meet with congressional leaders at the Capitol, again, to make sure that everybody's hearing this message. We will travel across the country for the next 12 months, sharing the message as well. So thank you for being here. Don't forget to sign your pledge. For those of you watching, thank you for joining. We'll see you very soon. Thank you.